As we gather here this morning, may we learn to recognize and affirm the pieces of possibility, the bits of good we bring. May we encourage rather than control, love rather than possess, enable rather than envy, allowing our individual gifts to weave a patchwork of peace, the soft, deep blue of sensitivity and understanding, the red energy of creativity, the white heat of convictions, the risky, fragile green of new growth, the golden flashes of gratitude, the warm rose of love. Each of us is indispensable if we are to minister to a broken and wounded world. Together in our gathered diversity, we form the whole. So be it. Well, welcome to the Time for All Ages, a story called Spoon Theory. We've had spoon parables before, but this one in particular is part of the culture of people who have chronic illness. And so I thought I would share it. There are two friends named Alphonse and Beth, and they spend time together almost every day. Some days they go walking, some days they play with the dogs, some days they just sit and have coffee, but some days Alphonse does not even answer the phone. Some days Alphonse will make plans and not show up. On one of those days, Beth called and called and called, and she left so many voice messages that she was sure Alphonse was ignoring her or maybe even mad at her. So she made a big pot of coffee and took it over to Alphonse's house and knocked on the door. Alphonse opened the door, but he looked terrible. He looked like he had run a marathon or watched TV all night. He was so tired. She said, "What's wrong? Why aren't you answering my calls?" And he looked at her and he blinked and he said, "You called?" She said, "Yes, I called you 100 times, I'm sure." "Oh," he said. And then he saw the coffee. "Oh, you brought coffee. Come on in." And so they came into Alphonse's house together, into the kitchen. And Beth said, "Well, I brought coffee, but I didn't bring cream or cups or sugar or spoons or anything. But what's going on with you? Why are you like this today?" Alphonse said, "Well, I have fibromyalgia, you know." She said, "I know, that makes you hurt, and some days it makes you tired. I don't really know much more about it than that." "Ah," he said, looking even more tired. "Sometimes," he said, "the only thing worse than being sick is explaining sick." And he could not think of a way to explain this all to Beth until he remembered that she had said spoons. And he went into his kitchen cupboard and he took out all the spoons that he had and he put them all right down in the middle of the kitchen table and in between them. And he said, "Okay, I'm going to explain this to you now. Imagine that every one of these spoons, every one, is a piece of your energy. And you have to decide how you're going to spend every single one of them." And Beth goes, "Oh, well, that doesn't sound so hard. I get up, I have breakfast, I have a shower." He said, "No, that's not how it works. It takes one spoon to get out of the bed. Sometimes it takes more than that, but we won't go there. It takes one spoon to have your breakfast, and it takes another spoon to have your shower." "Well, that doesn't seem fair," said Beth, "because that's a whole bunch of them already, and all I've done is get out of bed." "Exactly," said Alphonse. So they went through Beth's entire day like this and measured out everything in itty bitty little spoon-sized pieces of energy. And at the end of the day, Beth didn't have enough to do Not only things she wanted to do, but things she needed to do. She didn't have enough spoons to make her supper. Exactly, said Alphonse again. That's exactly it. And the problem with fibromyalgia is that it means I have half the spoons that you do. And he took away half of that measure. And Beth just looked for a second and thought about all the times that they had spent together, thinking about how every one of those was a spoon that Alphonse had chosen to spend on her. And she felt special for that, but she also felt, well, she felt a little guilty because it didn't cost her as many spoons as it did him. But sometimes finding the space between having enough and not having enough is where friendship lies. It's an art form, really. Feel cold darkness, but do not linger. Hold my breath against its invulnerability, then track the pool of light above me. Kick off the sucking mud enfolding my feet, deny its authority to hold me, and swim with all I am and hope to be. Break the surface and breathe in hope and insistence. But darkness is patient, and soon I fall through the water, drifting like a tumbling leaf. There's mud again and shadow, but I orient to the light and repeat. Good morning. I guess it's me now. I've been asking myself all morning if I'm ready. Am I ready? because you are the family of my heart, and we know each other very well in many ways. You have witnessed my joys, you have seen my sorrows, you've seen my struggles, and you've seen my triumphs. But here I am talking about where I came from. And not everybody knows that behind the smile, behind the music, I came from an extremely abusive childhood. I survived it, barely. My abusers went to jail. But I did not survive unscathed, of course, because that's part of what trauma does to people, is it injures us in ways that maybe don't show up until later. And in my 20s, I came so far through depression and PTSD that I started to harm myself. I started to cut myself. And many of you will have seen the scars. I am very scarred. I was very, very prolific as a cutter. And I didn't understand why I did it. I didn't understand it. People told me I was doing it for attention. I didn't understand why I felt the need. People told me that I was imagining it. I didn't understand why it had to happen, but it did. And for some reason, it was what kept me from absolutely killing myself. It was really hard not to take those messages on board. It was really hard not to believe that everything I was going through was my own fault. And society has a real proclivity for putting the problems of the person onto that person. So one thing I need to say is that addiction is a mental health problem. It is a sign of mental illness. It is not a flaw in character. It is not an inability to cope. Addiction is mental health issues. And it was the hardest thing I ever did to stop cutting, I swear. And I had to work at it, and I still do. I still have to think about it every day. I have to decide that today I do not harm myself. Today I do not cut. And so when our homeless neighbors became an issue, and we started talking about drug addiction, and we started talking about safe spaces for people to use drugs, that is why my voice had to come up. Because as an addict, not a former addict, as a recovering addict, I understand this. It's taken me a very long time to have compassion for the poor young woman who was cutting herself because she couldn't handle what life had handed to her. It has taken me a long, long time to learn that pain makes people do terrible things, not only to themselves, but to others. But we have pain in common, all of us. We all have pain in common. And we have a choice in how we react to that. We can respond to it with harsh measures and harsh words and harsh thoughts, or we can choose. And that's the big point here. We can choose to respond to ourselves with compassion as much as to anyone else. For me, Choosing compassion means I chose to get a guide dog, means I chose to leave an abusive relationship, means I joined the Unitarian Church. And all of you are part of my recovery. Every one of you, whether you know it or not. And I am grateful. I am so far beyond grateful that I don't know how to express it for who you are, in my life. Understand that whoever you are, when you show compassion, not only to someone else, but to yourself, you spread that, you share that, you help that to grow. Watching everyone here be compassionate with themselves and each other has helped me learn to be more compassionate with myself. And as a person with very few spoons, I have spent them here and always gotten benefit from my purchase. I have always found that the time and the energy I spend with my church gives back to me, helps me be a better human, helps me be more compassionate. I never know where exactly I'm going to go when I chat about my history. I never know exactly how it's going to turn out because I can't do it with notes. I can't do it deciding what the message will be. The message is always in me on any given day. And my message today is that we are a family of the heart. All of us, not just our church, not just our community, not just our country. And the compassion that we find spreads to all of our family. I have not timed myself. I have no idea how much time I have taken yet. I meant to.
If you'd like another few minutes, certainly go ahead. It's up to you.
I feel that I am done.
All right. Well, fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. There is finally only one thing required of us. That is to take life whole, the sunlight and shadows together, to live the life that is given us with courage and humor and truth. We have such a little moment out of the vastness of time for all our wondering and loving. Therefore, let there be no half-heartedness. Rather, let the soul be ardent in its pain, in its yearning, in its praise. Then shall peace enfold our days, and glory shall not fade from our lives.